I've been with my fiancé for 3 years, 8 months engaged. We've had our ups and downs, but for the most part things have been pretty great, until she moved in 6 months ago. We've been combining our lifestyles and finances, basically easing into merging our lives together. The problem is she's a people pleaser, in her own words. She's been in therapy for 6 years, and I guess I never knew how bad it was until moving in with her. A lot of which she's hidden from me. She recently was promoted into accounts payable at her company and realized she is the lowest paid person on payroll. She didn't negotiate a good starting wage, and has never asked for a raise, or had one, despite multiple promotions. She inherited a car a few months ago and sold it. She had offers online from $18,000 to $25,000. But sold it to the first person who showed up for $10,000. She caught someone stealing her bike at college. The woman stealing the bike managed to convince my fiancé that it was actually her bike and my fiancé just let her take it. Despite the fact that she caught the woman cutting her bike lock. Last spring was my 30th birthday and she ordered a giant chocolate cake for the party. The cake normally comes with nuts, but given my allergy for nuts she ordered it without them. Well, when she went to pick it up and it had nuts on it, she just paid for it and brought it home. I couldn't even be in the same room as the cake. Which brings us to tomorrow. My father recently passed away and I need to fly to the other end of the country to get things sorted out with family, attend the funeral, etc. Meanwhile, we recently had a pipe burst in our home, and the contractors will be out tomorrow to fix it. My flight's at 6 a.m. and my fiancé will have to handle it, including all the negotiations because we don't know the extent of the damages. I've been giving it a lot of thought and I just don't trust my fiancé to handle it. And if I can't trust or rely on her to do something like this, how can we really be life partners? I mean, I trust that she is always looking out for me, and has my best interest at heart, but I can't trust her to get things done. We've talked about it a few times before, but it's been unproductive. She's convinced she's just being nice and doesn't like confrontation, then brings up examples of extremely confrontational people. I think she puts her aversion to conflict above her / our long-term goals, and she needs to find a happy medium. She doesn't understand how negatively this is impacting her life. But at the same time, we've had some amazing years together and she really is a great person. We're compatible in almost every other way. I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her, don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her, and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi, and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess, and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, we like this place and have no solid plan. I freaked out and was like, you guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister. Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. I'm what the deaf, nonverbal audio, classify as hard-hearing, HH. Because I can communicate with hearing person without resorting sign languages or notes. I met my boyfriend, Alan, who is deaf about a year ago. I was the only person he could communicate at work with ASL, even though I only could sign basic words. Later, he began to teach me in more advanced ASL, and we found out we have so much in common in TV, movies, books, tastes with similar goals and desires in life that we became best friends that evolved into a romantic relationship. We're going strong 9 months now and we're compatible in every area. It's the best and healthiest relationship I ever had, and I'm always excited and giddy to see him at work or when we wake up together. He feels the same, and we're talking moving each other as soon his lease is up in 3 months from now. 2 months ago, we decided to meet each other parents, which all are hearing. He's their only deaf son. Alan met mine and it went fabulous. Then we met his parents, Irma and Paul. I thought we got along because they were smiling, gushing and laughing, but I'm beginning to believe they were putting their best masks for the sake of their son. One time on a family's birthday parties, Irma said in front of the ladies with me next to her, "It's so impressive you can talk with that speech impediment. I barely can understand you myself." She said as jokingly manner, but no one laughed. Everyone glanced at each other awkwardly and I just stared at her. Then excused myself. At first I wasn't sure if she meant as generational ignorant way like, "Who's the woman in the relationship?" to the gays. I didn't mention to my boyfriend because I was hoping it was only time remark. It wasn't. They made more comments, mostly Irma, about me struggling pronunciation or grammars, using sign language incorrectly and not teaching me the right one like Alan would do, or not having deaf//HH friends or not going more to deaf community and so on. It happened so gradual and subtle that I didn't realize they were being insulting to my face that to this day I still wonder. Most of the time they would make those comments without Alan nearby. I mentioned to Alan few times and he told me that maybe they were worried I might not understand the deaf culture. He talked to them that saying those things weren't helpful and he would appreciate if they would shut it up. They didn't. Few weeks ago at barbecue party, Irma and Paul sort of insinuated about my parent for not giving best tool for me, saying it was a shame that my parent didn't put me in deaf school or letting me to get cochlea implant or letting me to study abroad in non-deaf university program. They made it sound as if my parent crippled me as person because my social and emotional network didn't consist the right people. This time I got angry and I said what they said was rude. That my parents made lot sacrifice for me and no one has the right to belittle for their choices about raising me. Alan caught at the end of the conversation, lip reading, and asked me what's going on. Not so surprisingly, Alan's parent threw me under the bus, remarking I was so sensitive after making such innocuous comment. Alan saw I was uncomfortable and asked me if I want to leave. I said yes, and we left. When we got home he asked me what they said to me. I didn't want to say what his parent told me because it was so ugly to talk about it, but I told him anyway, and he got upset for me. He FaceTimed them and said they shouldn't said that. He told them they crossed the line. They pretended they didn't know what I was talking about, that perhaps I misunderstood, considering I'm hard-hearing, which upset Alan even more. They ended arguing for a few minutes before Alan hung up. Since then, Alan has become desolate and needy. He apologized to me hundreds of times for not believing me what I said before. I told them that he has nothing to apologize because I wasn't sure if they were being snide toward me until now, and I'm not going to blame Alan for what his parents said to me. He told me he's thinking reducing contact with them, but I told Alan it wasn't necessary. He can do whatever he wants with his parent, but that I rather would not go to any of his family gathering or go his parents. He assured he would never force me or put me in that situation ever again. We're closer together than we were, but he's still sad and he no longer goes to his family gatherings or his parents. I find him staring at nothing in particular for long minutes and his eyes, which used to sparkle, are now dim. I want to cheer him up, but I'm not so sure how to in first place. I just don't know what to do, and I don't understand why his parents are so rude toward me because I'm not completely deaf considering they aren't one.